Welcome to Legalized Negligence, where we are currently discussing the demise of Florida Statute 768.21 subsection 8. And the last couple of days, Travis and I have been doing podcast on the Senate Judiciary Committee that met on Monday, the 22nd of January. And we're having to take it in small bites because it was a very long meeting, nearly a 2-hour meeting. And so today we're going to pick up on part 3, which where they're in the public discussion part or public comment part on Senator Yarborough's amendment to his bill. And several people spoke last night, and because the podcast was getting close to an hour, we stopped it. But before I restart that, I'm going to play a clip of something that Senator Yarborough said, and I want you to listen to this because Travis has some comments on this. So here we go.
Reports that I've looked at. Belinda, I wanted to say thank you for sending what you said about Statista. I saw your email on that. I have researched, though, and found the Medical Liability Monitor Annual Rate Survey issue, October 23, Volume 48, number 10, and also a Guy Carpenter study, which performed an analysis of medical professional liability state by state. That was in November of 2023. It's about 200 pages, pretty long. Those do give rise to Florida having the highest medical malpractice insurance premiums in the nation. So in continuing to look at balance, again, taking into consideration what you said, I'm interested in any other data anyone wants to send us, but we do have reports that show that Florida is the highest in the nation, which is what, again, one of the findings is based on. Senator Thompson.
Okay, so here he said that he looked at some data that somebody gave to him, and we'll find out here in a minute from Travis who that person was. And Travis, go ahead and comment on what he just got through saying.
Okay, the Medical Liability Monitor is a publication that I believe was handed to him by lobbyist Mark Delegal, because Mark graciously gave it to Sabrina Davis, who then shared it with you and I. And going through the report, there's just areas where clarity of what you're looking at really should be made. And so I started digging into the numbers, and I find that the company, the doctor's company, is vastly more expensive in terms of medical malpractice than the other companies: Pro Assurance, Pro Select Insurance, Mag Mutual, Curl, and Medical Protective.
You can
but that's
you can share that now. I've taken down the screen.
All right, let me do that real quick. Monitor to. Let me know when it's up.
Okay, it's up.
All right, so here's the publication, and I'm going to scroll down here. Show you where the numbers will be coming from. Okay, so at the end of the report, you have every state with the numbers broken into 3 groups. You got internal medicine, general surgery, and OBGYN. Let me jump down here to Florida. Okay, so here's Florida. Okay, this first column is the 2022 rate. The second is the 2023. The third is the percent change between those two. So now I'll show you my spreadsheet where I put this data in. This is the exact same data, but sorted based on county. So you can compare the 5 companies or 6 companies based on county. And except for 2 counties where Mag Mutual beats out the doctor's company in all other counties is the highest, usually by a good amount, of all the other companies. The significance of this is it's the doctor's company's numbers that are being reported to the legislature, I believe. And these numbers are what's called manual rate, which is the rate before any discounts have been applied. Of course, the discounts could actually increase the rate. Let's say you have a doctor that is inexperienced, the rate might go up, or a doctor that has a lot of claims, the rate might go up. But if only 4% of the doctors in Florida are causing med mal, then the majority of these rates should be lower than what is being reported to the legislature. Yet this is what the legislature is looking at in terms of numbers.
Okay, I want to ask you a couple of questions here, just so people who are watching this understand what's happening here. Okay, scroll back up to where you were a minute ago. I think it was at the top. Okay, yeah, there. Okay, so over here on the left-hand side where you have a column for company, I'm pretty certain that the second one there, the doctor's company, that's one that Mark Delagal represents. Am I remembering that correctly?
Right, I believe they're a client of his.
Right, right. And we're not certain about Mag Mutual, whether or not they are a client of his or not.
Correct.
So what you're showing here is that the numbers that are being reported to the legislature come from the one company that charges the highest rate. Am I right?
You are correct.
Okay, so he's not giving to Senator Yarborough the other companies, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them there. He's not giving them the other ones. He's reporting the ones of his client that happen to be the highest. Now, the way that
well, let me qualify that.
Okay.
Until he gave the report, because the report has all the numbers. But traditionally, when you're saying, Miami has the highest rate of whatever, when you're giving a single instant number, I'm sure it's going to be the highest number, which comes from the doctor's company. But when you give the report, you're kind of giving them all.
Okay, and for the way that I'm able to put this into perspective and understand it is there are, and we'll use car insurance companies because everybody has to deal with car insurance. So you have some companies that give a lower rate and some companies that will give you a higher rate. And the reason that that rate is higher is because you either have a lot of traffic tickets on your record, that you've had a number of wrecks in the past. So they increase the rate, and those companies will insure the people who are a bad risk. So if you transfer that to these medical malpractice insurance companies, the one that Mark Delagal that has as a client, the doctor's company, they seem to have the highest rates. And that makes you wonder about who's buying malpractice insurance from them. Is it doctors who have malpractice claims against them? Is it the younger doctors? Just like a younger driver is going to have to pay a higher insurance premium than an older driver who has a good record. And the important part of this is that, when we talked about you can take statistics and twist them any way you want them to get them to say whatever you want them to say, we have to question what numbers the insurance lobbyists are providing to the legislature. And that's why we're trying to provide another story to them, to show them information like this. And we've been very fortunate to have a guy like Travis who understands how to do all of this stuff. Because if you left it up to me, I would have no idea how to make spreadsheets out of all of these numbers. But fortunately, you do.
You're too kind.
No, I'm not kind enough. If people really knew the amount of work that you put into this, that they would understand. Do you think we've explained that part well enough, Travis, or do we need to say anything else about that?
For these numbers, yes, but there is still more about the report that's important. Let me see if I can bring it back up and just touch the areas really quick. They show right here this combined ratio. The definition of this is your claims paid out plus your expenses, and I'm sorry, loss incurred, incurred loss plus expenses divided by your earned premiums. And expenses is a very vast category. You could easily ramp up payroll and increase the expenses, You could make investments and increase your expenses. You could hire a lobbyist and increase your expenses. You know, it's just a wrong metric, in my opinion, to give to the legislature because expenses are there. They should just be the incurred losses over the earned premiums if you're really wanting to see, you know, what you're paying out directly related to the medical claim.
Yeah.
That's one thing. The other issue that I would want to touch on really fast is this chart right here. Exhibit 5 and 6. These 9 companies, it says over here in this area right here, we note that all the companies listed in Exhibit 5 and 6 are physician-owned companies. Now, knowing that, if you look at the 3rd and 4th column here and here, you'll see that the indicated rate change, that's the rate that they should be charging to cover their expected claim liability. But the requested rate change is the actual rate increase in an effort to do the indicated rate cover. You know, they're undercharging themselves. Again, the doctors own these companies. The doctors effectively set the rate. They are purposefully undercharging themselves, giving them an argument to go to the legislature and saying, hey, we're losing money. Really, it's because you're not charging enough.
I'm only seeing one company out of 9 that are charging exactly what the indicated rate change is suggesting it should be. And that's number 2. All the other ones, they should be charging 19.9%, but they're charging 13.7. Number 3, they should be charging 37.2%, but they're charging 3.5, and so on down the line. So it's almost like they're manufacturing the problem.
That's correct.
You know, I can't say that they are, but, you know, to your average Joe who looks at these and goes, wait a minute, if you were charging what you should be charging in order to keep your reserves up that I spoke about yesterday, would there be a problem? But you're charging much less than that. So the reserves drop down. And then all of a sudden you'll hike them, you'll hike the premiums. Doctors start screaming, I'm going to leave the state. And, you know, it's not just the argument that doctors say they're going to leave the state. The insurance companies, which are owned by the doctors, say that we won't underwrite anybody in this state. So the insurance companies are trying to hold the state hostage as well. And when the state has a compelling interest to make sure there's enough doctors to meet the needs of all the citizens, you know, that's kind of like bordering on blackmail or extortion. You know, I know that it's not exactly, but you go, really? Imagine if a trucking company did that. You know, imagine if a trucking company said, you know, these fines that you're giving to our truck drivers out on the highways are so high that we're going to stop delivering goods to your state. And, you know, what would the legislature do? Go, oh, well, then we better write a law that says we can't give a trucker a speeding ticket, or we can't fine him if his truck, you know, is in bad mechanical repair. You know, they're literally holding them hostage here, and at the expense of the people's rights. You know, that's the sad part about it, at the expense of the people's rights. And 33 legislatures in the past have not addressed that problem. I'll shut up.
Let me show the map just so I can get it out of the way, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
All right. This is a map of people, their IP addresses, who filled out a form several years ago related to their, how do I say it? Their reporting of a lost loved one who fell into subsection A, Florida Statute 768.21, subsection A. And I recently found this data. It comes back. think maybe 2021, maybe goes back a little bit further, 2017. But it's not isolated to Florida. Yes, the vast majority is, but you will see all around the state, and there's even a couple other countries that are implicated by Florida statute.
Yeah, what this indicates is everywhere you see a blue dot, and the bigger the dot gets, the more people from that area. That's somebody's life who was affected by subsection 8. So it could be somebody, let's say, let's pick like Kansas City, Missouri. That person may have traveled to Florida on vacation and somebody got sick and wound up in a hospital and subsection 8 kicked in, or it could be that they have a relative in Florida that died because of malpractice. So we don't know those specifics, but what we do know is that all around the country, from Seattle, Washington to Miami, from Los Angeles, California to Maine, we do know that everywhere across the country, somebody's life has been touched by subsection 8.
Yeah, and this is just a drop in the bucket because obviously not everybody knows to fill out the form, when it was available. So this is just a tiny, tiny representation of really what is going on, who's all affected.
Yeah, this was one person who asked a small group of people that she knew to write some statement about subsection 8 having an impact on their lives. And so it was just, microscopic compared, to the big picture.
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing now.
Okay. All right, we're going to pick up where we left off last night. Eric Tinsman, I think was his name, spoke. And so we're going back to where he was, and you'll probably hear a few words of his ending thing. And then after that, we're going to pick up with a fellow named Bobby Bowers.
Private equity from California, New York, they're the reason these doctors are so busy and overworked and committing mistakes, okay? So we're going to rely on a cap that's going to keep that down, or are we going to allow the jury to decide that radiologist should not have looked at 10,000 slides the day he missed that mammogram?
Mr. Tinsman, I'm going to have to ask you to finish your comments.
I appreciate it. I'll say one more thing. I think this is an objective statement. There are 3 ways to deal with injured and grieving people. Our system, the best in the world. Big government bureaucracy like Europe, where the nanny state steps in and decides how much a life is worth, or Mad Max. We should keep it to this system where we trust the same ballot box and the jury box. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you. Bobby Bowers, followed by, excuse me, I'm sorry, Mr. Tinsman, we have a quick question for you. Yeah.
If I could, thank
Trying
you.
to move things here, and
Just a quick question, Madam Chair, if I could.
you recognize Henry Arbor?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Tinsman, just that one of the last comments you made, and you don't have to respond now if you don't have it available, but you mentioned out-of-state hedge funds are the reason doctors might be making a lot of mistakes. We're trying to deal with a lot of data and hard facts here. Can you provide that information to my office?
Yes.
That suggests that that is true, so we can review it?
You're
Yes, sir. I'm
recognized.
here all week, and we'll set up a time we can come with that data.
That sounds fine.
I
Thank you.
appreciate that question.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming back up. Mr. Bowers, followed by Jason Goldman, Dr. Goldman, and then James Bounds. Mr. Bowers, Bobby Bowers, you're recognized.
Good afternoon. My name is Bobby Bowers. I am a retired homicide detective from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. My daughter was living a good life. She was a loving mother. She was working to become a nurse, but due to the medical malpractice, her life changed forever. She now spends most of her time in bed. She needs to be hoisted with a lift in order to get into her wheelchair. She has to have help with every single task, from brushing her teeth to eating, bathing, brushing her hair, clothing herself. Her family members now have to take care of all her personal needs. She couldn't dance to her son's wedding. She couldn't be there when her first grandchild was born. Her life was destroyed due to medical negligence, medical malpractice. Under the law you're proposing, there will be a $500,000 cap on human damages, no matter what the circumstances, for each individual. That's not what this country is about. We have a civil jury system that allows jurors to decide what is the right amount of compensation when someone is injured due to medical negligence. You want to take that away with a big government takeover. It will only help the insurance industry and harm the citizens of this state. Please look at my daughter, who was once full of life. If this was your daughter, your son, your grandchild, would $500,000 suffice? Would you consider that justice, given the harm that was caused? Please do the right thing for your constituents and do the right thing for the people of Florida.
Thank you for being here. Thank you all for being here.
Okay, I think Mr. Bowers confuses economic and non-economic damages, but he does make a very good point about what, think about this. He's your average citizen. And the way that he sees this is it is a government takeover, which only will serve to help the insurance companies. And this goes back to the logo that we designed for legalized negligence. On one side, you have the state in the scales of justice with the people on the other side, and the state outweighs the people. I don't know if anybody's ever wondered about our logo that we created, but that's the way the average citizen sees this, is that the government is helping the big companies instead of helping the people. And everyone needs to remember, like Thomas Jefferson said, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. That is the only proper purpose for government, is to secure the individual rights of the people, even when big corporations are infringing upon them. It's government's job to step in and protect our rights. Otherwise, why would we want a government? We could protect ourselves better on our own without it. I'll get off my soapbox. Did you have anything to say?
No, you're on a roll. Well, they even gave us the Supreme Court to protect us from the government. So again, that's two means of protecting the people that are failing.
Yeah. Government should only, when a problem arises, everything that the government does or thinks needs to be filtered through the understanding that my job is to protect the people's rights. And if I see that those rights are being trampled, whether by a big corporation or by government itself, our job is to protect their rights. I'll shut up and let Dr. Goldman speak.
Philip, you might maximize that video on the screen.
Okay, let me do that. How's that? Is that a little better?
I'm waiting for it to, that is better, yes.
Okay. All right, up next is Dr. Goldman. He's the president of the Florida Medical Association. Wonder where he stands on all of this.
Dr. Goldman will be followed by James Bounds and then Alexander, I believe it says Clem. Dr. Goldman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Chairman Yarborough, thank you for introducing this amendment. Members of the committee, I'm Dr. Jason Goldman, president of the Florida Medical Association, representing the physicians of Florida, also a general internal medicine specialist in private and solo practice for over 20 years. I've had multiple experiences dealing with patients' healthcare, both in the hospital as well as outpatient, and have great experience on the grassroots as a solo private practice physician dealing with patients every day. I want to echo many of the opening comments of Chairman Yarborough that was spot on into why this is such a good amendment, and we thank you for doing this. The issue is not only just the rising cost of medical malpractice premiums that will go up, but also the real world access to care for our sickest, most vulnerable, and most complicated patients. The current malpractice climate is hostile for our ability to be able to take care of patients. And if we don't have caps on non-economic damages, as 31 other states do, what we see is we will not be able to get physicians to come to the state of Florida and practice. We will will also see and have seen a decrease in the access to care of patients for their physicians. My own patients who have ended up in our local hospitals had to be transferred to tertiary care centers for what should have been simpler problems that could be handled in the hospital, but we had no specialists to take care of them because they're not obligated to take call, nor did they want to take call in these high-risk situations because of the lack of caps on non-economic damages and the liability risk that they face. So these patients had to be transferred to a tertiary care center, an overburdened system, not get the access to care that they need. In my own area, we do not have enough primary care physicians. We do not have enough primary care physicians in the state. You've seen the workforce data that this is decreasing. I travel nationally. I
Dr.
work with our
Goldman.
National Internal Medicine, I will finish, our National Internal Medicine organization and throughout the country. We see that physicians are not coming to Florida. So I thank you for this amendment. We rise in support. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
I can't believe this dude had the guts to stand up and say what he did. He actually said that there were patients that were being transferred to tertiary care facilities, which means third in line facilities, because the doctors didn't want to treat them because caps weren't in place. And so the doctors feared if they were sued, if something went wrong and they were sued, they chose to not treat the patients. I can't believe that he actually just admitted that, but he did.
There's a way of looking at that. Either the doctor knows their ability is lacking, or that there are just better doctors at tertiary facilities who will do the work. You know, so with a doctor who feels they're lacking, you know, maybe their rates should be higher.
I cannot imagine, you know, people always bring up the Hippocratic Oath. And the fact is that not all doctors take the Hippocratic Oath anymore. There's quite a few different ones out there. They don't all say, first, do no harm. In fact, you'll find very few of them that still include that phrase, but people will bring that up all the time. Forgive me, Travis. I'm getting over this flu. I'm much better, but I still got a cough left. That these doctors who were supposed to, at least the public believes that they're there to help them, but now the doctors are actually saying, well, I'm not going to treat that patient because if something goes wrong, then I don't want to be sued, because if I'm sued, there are no caps. And there is something, and I'm going to challenge people to look this up. I'm not going to get into a long discussion about it, but there's something called the thin skull patient or the eggshell patient. And every state has a version of that. But in Florida, it's called the eggshell patient or the thin skull patient. And basically it says you take the patient as they are. You know, you can't pick and choose who you decide to treat. So research that on your own and read about that, and know that there is law existing in Florida that requires doctors to treat these patients, even though they have illnesses beyond what brought them to the hospital. You know, they have what they refer to as comorbidities. Look into that and think about what this guy just said.
Yeah. He also mentioned that 31 states have caps. Well, those states are creating an artificially low rate to which Florida is being compared. You know, so the question becomes, if those caps didn't exist, what would their rates be and how would Florida rate in comparison? Because that argument being made a lot is that Florida has the highest rates, but you're not normalizing the field that you're comparing to.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go back to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, and he admitted to that, you know, not in that words, but, you know, in effect.
I'm going to go back to what my mom used to say to me, and I've heard other people say it, that their mom said it to them. If all your friends jumped off the building, would you jump off with them too? You know, just because 31 other states has this does not necessarily mean that it's a good idea. Um, you know, I remember a lot of things about Florida at the beginning of COVID where DeSantis took a lot of pride in the fact that Florida was doing things different than other states. You know, he started calling it the free state because they did away with mask mandates rather early. They didn't require people to get vaccines. There was a lot of things that Florida was doing to keep the tourists coming to Florida. And if he wanted to single Florida out at that time, then why don't they want to single them out and be different this time? Just because other states in the union decide to do something doesn't necessarily mean that Florida has to, you know. So I never have bought that argument when people say, well, the other states are doing it. Well, then move to the other state if that's what you want to do. The next person up is a fellow named, oh, by the way, they now start to limit people to 1 minute to speak because there's still so many speakers coming up and they're running out of time. So we're gonna pick back up with a guy named Andrew Bonds, I think is his name.
And gentlemen.
Well, that's just trying
approximately
for
45
unequal
minutes.
representation.
Oh, I'm sorry, Travis. I didn't realize you were talking.
That just shouts out unequal representation. They get 3 and I get 1.
Yeah, and I mean, their excuse, they're not trying to be mean, but these committee rooms are they're booked, you know, for like two-hour periods or however long they think it's going to take, and all those people sitting there have other meetings to go to, and this is why it's so important to speak to them throughout the year. You know, don't wait till they're going to give you 1, 2, or 3 minutes. You've had a whole year to talk to them, a whole year to share your ideas with them.
Selection of this committee. I have about 45 appearance cards. This committee still needs to move into the main bill. We need to debate. We need to vote. We will run out of time. I'm going to limit everybody moving forward to 1 minute. If you have already heard what you were going to say, please take the opportunity to rise either in support or against the amendments. We're going to move forward as long as I can. There's another committee meeting after this committee meeting, so we won't have a long extension of this meeting. Having said that, I'm trying to speak quickly here so I don't take up your time. James Bounds, followed by Alexander Clem, followed by Andrew Bolin. Everybody has 1 minute at this point. Mr. Bounds, you're recognized.
Good afternoon, and thank you, members of the committee. Thank you, Chairman Yarborough and Senator Book. We appreciate your time and effort. Given the limitations, I'll only address one of my points, and that is the state of Florida has 22,610,000 residents. There are tens of millions of care events per day in this state. However, in 2023, there are only 1,295 lawsuits that were medical malpractice lawsuits. That is it. That's less than 1% of the civil cases filed in this state. Medical malpractice claims are not a crisis. They're at their lowest levels they've ever been, and that is without caps. Instituting additional caps isn't something that's needed because simply there aren't that many malpractice cases filed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Travis, I don't know exactly what to make of his stats. I agree with what he's saying, that, you know, civil cases, it's less than 1% of civil cases, that there is really not a crisis there. But if you have 22 million people, almost 23 million people in the state, residents, how do you have tens of millions of care events each day? And I guess you could say that one patient in a hospital might have 10 different care events in a day. And maybe they collect some data to be able to say that, but he doesn't cite his source. But it does make.
Yeah, you would have to know. You would have to know exactly what he's citing as a care event in order to figure that out.
You know, like the nurse comes around every 2 hours and checks your temperature over a 24-hour period. That comes out to 12 care events. You know, I don't know where he's getting that number. I wish he would have said that so I could better, because it does affect the way he does his math and, you know, comes up with 1%. You know, I don't know. So, but
Well, is every event having the ability to cause malpractice? Technically, yes. But, how much do you nitpick?
yeah, I just don't know. I wish he would have cited his source, and I'm just trying to be fair. Um, I don't want to seem one-sided. I want to be fair with what they say. This next guy I've got here, I'll just let you listen to him. I made a little note to myself that he never really makes his point, but y'all can determine that.
Alexander Clem, followed by Andrew Boland, and then Brian Jackson. You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Alexander Clem here from Orlando, Florida. I want to talk to you about human losses. The law calls them non-economic damages. And under the law, there are rights that are available to Floridians for diminution and loss of quality of life when you survive a medical incident, adverse medical incident. And there's also a law that provides for medical damages, especially for children, when there's a complete loss of life of a parent. And they call that loss of parental guidance, companionship. I look at this from the perspective, as we all must. If you pass a law, you've got to look at it from the perspective of 23 million Americans. When I look at it from the perspective of me, if I were sitting in your chair, my wife is by far and away the most important person in my family unit. We have 3 children. Many years ago, my children were roughly 5, 3, and 1. I think about the annual mammograms that my wife went to. And what if she goes to the mammogram, gets it as clear as day to even an average radiologist is right there.
Mr. Clem, I'm sorry, but we need to go on to the next speaker at this point.
I understand.
You are against the amendment, I'm assuming.
Obviously.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to have to ask.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I wish he would have gotten to his point. He probably had something good to say, but he didn't narrow it down to a minute's time, unfortunately. And up next is Andy Boland again with the Florida Justice Reform Institute. So let's hear what Mr. Boland has to contribute.
Andrew Boland, followed by Brian Jackson, followed by Michael Beecham. Mr. Boland, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Andy Boland on behalf of the Florida Justice Reform Institute in favor of the amendment. I want to address 2 things very quickly regarding some of the legal issues that have been brought before the committee. The first is that these caps have already been ruled unconstitutional. I want to be very clear that the caps that are on the books in the state of Florida were ruled unconstitutional because of equal protection challenges. And Senator Yarborough's bill cures those ills. It is now a per claimant cap, which addresses the concerns of the court, and it removes that aggregate cap. The other issue that I want to talk about is how these caps will actually apply from a legal perspective. First and foremost, for the most catastrophically injured plaintiffs, when there are care needs that are $45 million, $25 million, whatever the case may be, this bill does not address those whatsoever. Those can be earned dollar for dollar. The final point that I'll make is that—
Mr. Boland, I'm sorry, I have
Yes,
to call the next speaker.
Thank you.
Right.
He pretty much just says what he has always been saying. He's for the caps, which makes me think that he believes that subsection 8 is going to be repealed, or they wouldn't be pushing the caps as hard as they are. But he does do a good job at the end explaining the difference between economic and non-economic damages. People really need to get that straight in their head, because I think a lot of people don't quite get that. Do you have anything you wanted to say here, Travis?
No, it's just that the time is so short. They don't really give you much to counter them with.
Yeah, you're right. Which I'm hoping that we can get as far as Sabrina, because Sabrina really kept her comments. She really did a great job keeping it down to a minute and being able to make her point. Where are we at on the time right now? We started at, I think it was 1 o'clock.
We're 42 minutes in.
42 minutes. Okay, we'll let a couple more of these people speak, and then we'll try to wrap up so this doesn't go on for so long. So this next guy up is Brian Jackson. He's from Texas, which I think is interesting that they brought him in here. They must really be wanting some people to be swayed to their view. Here we go.
Brian Jackson, followed by Michael Beecham, followed by Michael Williams. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Brian Jackson with the Texas Alliance for Patient Access, and I came here from Texas to tell you the Texas story, how our state solved a medical liability crisis with the passage of legislation that included caps. Between 98 and 2002, our premiums for physicians rose 900%. Non-economic damages increased 500%, jury awards in those 4 years. The environment resulted in physicians retiring or leaving Texas. Texas passed caps, and as a result of that, premiums went down 65% over the last 20 years. Physicians came back to Texas. During the time period that Texas population increased 38%, our physician numbers increased 90%. The caps resulted in more doctors coming to Texas. And I personally know Florida-born, Florida-educated doctors that are now practicing in Texas because we have a better liability environment. Thank you for allowing me to tell the Texas story.
You know, the only thing I can say about this guy is that he never addresses the actual malpractice. The only thing that is important to him is that the doctors aren't fined heavily by jury awards, and that's quite okay with him. He never brings up, I mean, think about this. Even if there's a lawsuit that moves forward and the jury is strapped by the caps that they can't go over in their award, that is an admission that malpractice occurred. You know, even if the jury was only able to award $1, that $1 says that malpractice occurred. And the only thing that these guys care about is that their doctors don't have to pay a lot of money when they commit negligence in the hospital.
Yeah, that is such a great pause position for his grin.
Yeah, I can say a lot about that.
And the thing about the population increase, how do you know where that came from? It could be people coming across the border for all they know.
Yeah, especially in Texas.
Exactly.
But I mean, I guess if I got to say something nice about him, I could say he's probably an attorney, and he knows how to condense his thoughts down into 1 minute, you know. So I'm glad the money he spent for law school taught him how to do that. This next guy is like the saddest case in the world, Michael Beecham, with a daughter that her hand's falling off. This just tears me up.
Thank you. Michael Beecham, followed by Michael Williams, and then Karen Murillo. You're recognized.
Good afternoon. I want to introduce you to our daughter, Maddie James. She is 13 months and one of the most innocent little angels on earth. Probably reminds many of you of your own children or grandchildren, but Maddie is very different and always will be. As you can see, she's losing the fingers on her left hand. She was born with 2 healthy hands. She didn't have an accident. She was under the medical care in the hospital on a completely unrelated issue when the circulation got cut off due to medical negligence, and her hand is now going to be lost. On Christmas morning, Maddie's sister and I had to remove her thumb that was dangling from cartilage for fear that she would choke on her own finger and die. Her other fingers will fall off one by one. There isn't a day that goes by that Maddie's mother and I are not reminded of all the things Maddie will not have. She won't play basketball like her mother, or trumpet like me, or piano like her brother. She won't, when she gets married, have a finger for her loved one to put a ring on. And she will always be known as the girl with one hand to other children.
Mr. Beecham, I'm
Yep.
sorry, but I have to allow the next speaker to come up at this point. Thank you for being here.
I'll just say one thing. Maddie's got 100 years in her lifespan, 82 years as a Florida voter, presumably. A $500,000 cap is about a latte a day for her life. And if anyone in this board thinks that you can
allow the next speaker to come up.
Yeah.
Michael Williams, followed by Karen Murillo.
You did well.
Yeah, I really can't even comment on that. I mean, you know, what do you say about something like that? And I know that the legislators have to keep the meeting moving on, but man, it sure does make them come across as cold-hearted when they can listen to that story and have to cut the guy off at a minute, you know.
I would love to have a camera view of the legislators as the stories are being said.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to move to this guy. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3 more, and then it would be a good place for us to stop. This next guy is named Michael Williams. He's with the Florida Hospital Association. I thought it was kind of interesting. Watch as he walks up to the lectern and the lady is walking away with her baby. I don't know, it kind of strikes me as he's like kind of dodging her, just looked a little weird.
You recognize?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Williams, Florida Hospital Association, General Counsel. Thank you, Chair Yarborough. We rise in support of this amendment. We appreciate all the hard work you've done on this. I just want to reiterate that this is an access issue as much as anything else. Caps on non-economic damages are going to improve a physician workforce in this state that has a projected shortage of 36,000 by 2035. One bullet point from Texas that Mr. Jackson didn't mention, their analysis of their non-economic damage law showed that they put in, over the 20 years after the law was passed, 18,000 extra physicians over their expected baseline. That would cut our shortage in half. Reason for that, according to our OIR, family practitioners in Florida and Miami-Dade County, which is the highest in the country, $52,000 premium. In Texas, their highest county, $9,185. ER doc, $112,000 in Miami-Dade County. Texas, $16,074.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
Again, here's another one that it's only about money. Talks about Texas added 18,000 physicians after they enacted caps. Well, the doctors didn't have to worry about being sued for a lot of money. So of course they're going to move. It's all about how the doctors feel protected and not having any accountability. And I don't mean to just harp on doctors. Nurses are just as guilty of this stuff, So do you have anything you want to say about him, Travis? Kind of the same old story.
No, I'll go back later and look at his numbers and see which company he's reporting on.
Okay. The next one is, and I was kind of surprised at this one, Karen Murillo with the AARP, because the last I heard, they were not in support of repealing subsection 8, but it seems like they are now.
Karen Murillo, followed by Tony Yates, who's going to be followed by Sarah Franqui. You recognize.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Karen Murillo on behalf of AARP. Mr. Chair, I want to bring up unintended consequences of this amendment for your attention. We applaud you for the wrongful death work that the exceptions that you're working on, but this is going to disproportionately impact older adults, especially older vulnerable adults. Lines 14 through 25 of your amendment include references to nursing facilities as well as assisted living facilities. And the non-economic caps are going to disproportionately impact those seniors, those older adults. Their recovery for economic damages is already significantly limited due to no loss of wages in most cases, and due to their reliance on Medicaid and Medicare. Non-economic damages are all that they can rely upon. So this is going to impact them most critically. And for that reason, we are asking that the committee vote no on this particular amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony Yates.
Yeah, am I remembering that right, Travis, that at one point the AARP was not in support of eliminating subsection 8?
I don't remember, don't know. I'd have to go and research that.
Well, if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, but I'm glad to see that they do support it and recognize how it's going to impact older people who are living on a fixed income. This is the last guy that we'll listen to today, Tony Yates.
Followed by Sarah Franqui, followed by Robert Arrington. Good afternoon, you recognize.
Thank you. My name is Tony Yates, and I'm from Pensacola, Florida. My wife and I were married for 25 years, and we have 4 beautiful children. Due to medical negligence, we lost my wife. The thought of politicians putting a value on my wife's life is unbelievable to me. The folks in this room are not the right people for that. We hire jurors across this country every day and they listen for weeks and weeks like they did in my trial to details and a very personable level. These are the people that need to put the number on the life. They say that time stops the pain. Well, I don't think that's the case. Just this past week, our youngest daughter, Amber, sent me pictures of her putting new flowers on her mother's grave. And that picture is her quilt. And I wish I could say there was a lot of tears of joy and happiness in that quilt, but there's a lot of tears of pain. I pray that all of you will not have to experience the heavy, deep loss that my family has experienced.
Thank you,
for
Mr.
your
Yates.
time.
Thank you for being here.
I'm going to stop the share on that because that's as far as we're going to go with it. Mr. Yates brings up some really good points and kind of echoed some things that we've been saying all along, is that, it's not up to the legislature to decide this. This is something that should be decided by the people who sit on a jury. And when I was listening to him, the thought came to my mind how they always talk about it is your civic duty to show up when you're called to sit on a jury. And they try to, always treat the people who want to get out of jury duty as being not good citizens. Well, if you're going to do that and you're going to, try to say that we're not doing our part by not wanting to be on a jury when we're called. Well, now why do you not want us to do our part? The whole idea of going to the jury is for the people to be able to speak. And now suddenly the legislature wants to take that job over. At least be consistent. But like I told you the other day, I can't remember if I said it in a podcast or as we were just talking personally. I think the whole idea is that they're trying to do away with juries altogether. It's going to take a long time for that to happen. But you see them instituting these binding arbitration agreements. They have these weird courts that you and I were talking about earlier, where a court decides something versus a jury. I think that they are ultimately working for, at some point in the future, Americans will no longer have juries that they go plead their case before. They would rather the government come up with answers for everything. And I think this is just one little part of that puzzle that they're trying to put together.
I agree.
Yeah, but
I think we need to reach out to the life insurance companies and get them on board, because they are paying their payouts way sooner due to medical malpractice.
well, let's talk about that for just a minute, because that was an excellent argument that you brought up earlier to me back in 2023 when you said, think about, and let's take somebody who, they die from medical malpractice when they're 26 or 28 or 30 years old, and they have a life insurance policy. And to make the numbers simple, let's call it they had a $500,000 life insurance policy, and they're making payments every month on that. But they live a very brief period of time, so the insurance company doesn't get the premiums paid in that it's expecting to make had they lived to 80 or 85 or 90 years old. So they're harming the insurance companies that provide life insurance to people, while at the same time protecting the doctors who provide, whose insurance companies provide medical malpractice insurance to them. The way insurance works is an insurance company takes a gamble on everybody that they insure. And over the long haul, they expect to take in more money than they wind up paying out. Well, if you just get a policy, it's like when I got my life insurance policy, and I asked my insurance agent, when does this go into effect? He said, as soon as the first payment is made. And I thought, well, man, I mean, they'd really lose out on me. I could get in my car and get in a wreck, and suddenly they're going to pay off my mortgage for me. But if I had lived 30 or 40 or 50 years past that, they would have been able to take in my premiums every month, invest them in areas that's going to make more money for the company. And, that I'll talk to you about this later, but that might be another idea to bring up to Yarborough, is that the CEOs and the employees of the insurance company can only be paid out of the money that is made from investing the premiums. Instead of taking the money to make a payout directly from the premiums, that's got to always stay stable. They've got to be solvent there. And the way that you pay your employees is by investing that money wisely and making a profit with it. That's something we should think to include to send to Yarborough. Do you have any closing thoughts, man?
No, but that might be a reason why AARP is standing up now, is because of, I'm sure they have their hands in insurance, disability or otherwise. Maybe they're starting to take notice.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what AARP provides. I'm at that age that I could join them. I'm 65 now. I guess I could look into it and see what all they offer, but it might be that they're having some of their people that are buying their products dying and realizing, hey, we're starting to lose money here. And when you hit a company in the pocketbook, they stand up and take notice. You're right. So, well, if you don't have anything else to add, Travis, I thank you for joining me today. I'll get this uploaded, and then hopefully tomorrow we can do part 4 and get through. There's still a bunch of people that are going to speak. And like always, neither one of us are attorneys. So don't take anything that we say as advice. Always do your own research, and like, subscribe, invite your friends, click the notification button, all that stuff that everybody says. Travis, take care. Stick around for a minute, and we'll chat before we close.
All right. Bye, everybody.